Hi folks, this is All the Fruit, and today I am on the Heidelberg Teachers College campus, and here is a beautiful cherry garden with lots of different cherry varieties. This garden was planted by the state. The cherries were chosen by the Botanic Garden of Heidelberg. However, there seems to be a little problem with the records for some reason. Nobody seems to have kept any records of those cherries, or at least I couldn't find them. So I asked the old botany professors around here. I asked the Botanic Garden, I asked the university, I asked even the department, the state's department for management of state-owned buildings. Nobody knows anything. The Teachers College, they even made a book about all those trees on campus over 30 years ago, but even in this book it just says Prunus Avium for all those cherries. Yeah, all those cherries are Prunus Avium, but they don't state the varieties. So I will show you a lot of different looking cherries, but I cannot tell you the varieties. Let's start with this tree. No cherries on this tree. Why are there no cherries on this tree? Well, this is a pretty early cherry variety. Those were ripe in May. I would have made a video about this early cherry variety, but since I didn't know the variety, I just came and ate some of them. Now let's go here. Nice big red cherries on that tree. I hope you can see me when I'm filming upwards. Well, most of the cherries on the lower branches have already been eaten by the students. Oi. Let's get a couple. Fortunately, I'm taller than the average student. Those on the lower branches are still not 100% ripe. As you can see on the higher branches, they're already dark red, turning to black. On the lower branches, they are just red, but they're already good enough to eat. Since this year we have a pretty rainy June, it's possible that some of the cherries will not even get completely ripe, but will be caught by the next rain and destroyed by the next rain. Quite good. Later when I finish the video, I'll climb this tree and eat some of the cherries on the higher branches, which are already dark red, turning black. But I don't know the variety. Let's look at this tree. The cherries look like they're not very ripe, right? They are just yellow with some little red spots. Well, that's not a problem. Those cherries will never turn completely red. Let's find a couple of the most ripe ones. Oi. Okay, yes, the really ripe ones are often starting to rot because of the frequent rains in this year. Oh yeah, look at them. Most of them already start rotting. Well, when you have ripe cherries and rain, that's what happens. They basically explode because of the rain, and as soon as the skin is broken, fungi and bacteria enter them, so they start rotting. This one, well, the skin was broken by basically by the pressure of the sugars inside the fruit because of the rain, because the water outside, the lower osmotic pressure, but after that it got dry again, so it's not rotting yet. So this is a cherry variety which never gets really red. They get about as red as this, half red, half yellow, but they are already ripe and good to eat. Phew. Well, here is another red variety, slightly smaller and slightly less dark red. So this variety later will turn kind of dark red to purplish, but will not turn almost black like the first three. Yep, already nice and sweet. Here we have a cherry plum. Those green fruit are not cherries, they are just plums, which will look like cherries once they get ripe. They will either look like red or yellow or purple cherries. But no cherry, this is a plum. Here we have another cherry. Look at them. They are just yellow. Not even the slightest hint of red. Let's go to the sunny side. Well, fortunately the students have not really discovered them yet. Probably they don't know that yellow cherries can be already ripe. Let's try the yellow cherries now. Yeah, there are varieties where all those chemicals which make the cherry red are being bred out, or you just find the tree where the enzyme which produces the red color in the fruit is not working, and then what you get are ripe yellow cherries. Not as popular as the red ones. Humans, just like birds, are conditioned to go for the nice red fruit because red usually means ripe. Well, in this case, yellow also means ripe. Here is a cherry tree which was definitely planted, but it looks a lot like wild cherries. Really small, dark fruit. They are really ripe. Look at them. Some of them, oops, now I dropped them. Let's try again. Some of them are rotting, some of them are shriveling up. Well, I don't want any of those. Let's get the nice ripe ones. Really small cherries. Let's try them. But they are not wild cherries. This is some cherry cultivar. There's just a very slight hint of bitterness, almost non-existent. Apart from that, they are just nice and sweet and juicy. And people are not picking them so much because they are going for the bigger fruit. So here I can get a couple of the low-hanging fruit, literally. What a pity I did not find out the names of all those varieties. Folks, I really tried for almost 3 months to find out those names, but nobody could help me. Here there is a different species of cherry. This is Prunus padus. Yeah, those are the inflorescences, but somehow they didn't get pollinated very well, so there are just very few cherries growing there. Still, let's try one. Well, sour, a little bit astringent and bit strange taste, which reminds me of some currants. Well, as I said, Prunus padus. I guess this must have been the rootstock of some cherry cultivar. The cherry cultivar died and the rootstock survived. Really interesting. Here some more feral cherry plums. Here some cherry cultivar, which is not dark red, not pinkish, but something in between. But no low-hanging fruit, so I cannot get to those. Let's see what we got here. A couple more pinkish cherries, which will never turn really red. Well, let's try them anyway. They might not be red, but they are ripe. And then last but not least, here in this huge hedge we have some, well, I would say this is wild Prunus avium, wild cherry, the ancestor of all those cultivars you saw. But since it's growing wild here, this was basically planted by a bird. Well, the seed was dispersed by a bird. Since it's here between the university campus, between the teachers college campus with its cherry plantation, and on the other side behind this hedge a lot of gardens with a lot of domestic cherries, I think that this will also be oh yeah, this is definitely some mix between wild cherry genes and cherry cultivar genes. Definitely a spontaneously growing tree. Small, a lot of small fruit, but just a small trace of bitterness. Here is another spontaneously growing cherry tree, also with some small cherries. They don't look so much like wild cherries. Let's try them. Those are also sweet, with but a hint of bitterness. Here we have a third, basically wild cherry, or what shall we call it? Semi-wild, semi-feral cherry. A little bit different genotype. Look, almost all the fruit are already rotten. Here I find one single fruit which is not rotten yet. I take everything back, it is. Bah. Okay, well, I guess all the fruit of this third feral cherry are rotten, but, well, this one tasted disgusting, but also no bitterness. So as you can see, those cherries here, those three trees, those three spontaneously growing trees in this hedge, they might look like wild cherries, but because there's a lot more domestic cherries around here than wild cherries, there are some mix of wild cherry from the forest, cherry cultivars, and probably rootstock, which just outcompeted the cherry cultivars and survived. So, really interesting. A couple weeks ago I showed you some, well, spontaneously growing cherries which were definitely feral cherries. You could see and also taste that they were not really wild cherries. They were a little bit bigger, they looked different. They were crunchy, which wild cherries are not when they are fully ripe. And they were also not bitter. So those were definitely feral cherries. Here we have a couple of those cherries which look like wild cherries, but they are definitely some mix of different cherry genotypes. Like, yeah, some cherry gets pollinated by pollen from a very different cherry, and the result is something that looks like a wild cherry, but is often not bitter, so you get a nice sweet cherry that looks like a wild Prunus Avium. Nice. Well, I guess I showed you all the diversity in this cherry garden. Unfortunately, I couldn't tell you any names. Stay tuned for a lot more cherry videos, hopefully with names, from the parks, gardens and farms of Germany. And don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.